Okay, welcome to the October 20th EBIC meeting, everyone. Thank you for being called to order. Did everyone see the minutes that were distributed by David this morning? Okay, does anyone have any discussion about it? Any items on it? Does someone want to move to approve same?
Yes.
Does someone want to second?
Second.
Thanks. Any, all in favor?
Aye.
Any negative? Opposed? See, my mouth is still asleep. Any abstentions? Okay.
I'll abstain, I wasn't here.
Okay, no abstention. So passed. Anyone have anything for public speak? Okay, Jamie, you want to tell us about the planning department?
Sure. So first thing, I think I emailed everyone the community development strategy meetings tonight. We didn't have a chance to look at it. Just pass that around. Just remind everyone, it's a yearly update, or sorry, every 3-year update of the development strategies for the community development block grant, as well as relating to some overarching planning priorities. So again, that's tonight at 6 p.m. upstairs. Other things, the state just came out with the Urban Agenda grant program. They're providing funding for housing, economic development, planning, and I think economic, I forgot what the last category, no, okay. And so we are, the city, through planning, through Jessica, submitting a letter of intent to apply for a planning grant, which I think is still being discussed as to what the specifics of that grant would be.
I guess that's what I was going to ask you, Jamie, is that when you apply for a planning grant, is it planning related to a specific project, or is it just planning in general?
No, it's a specific project. So they, I haven't been involved in those conversations, and I don't know what the specific program idea is, but the planning grant would help to, I think it's up to like $60,000, which would be, making an economic development plan might be a planning type grant. It wouldn't necessarily be an implementation of any of those strategies or anything like that, but it would be a plan that you can use to go forward.
So you could maybe host those collaborative meetings with the public? You know, the charrettes that they do, and
Depending on what
they decide.
Depending on what the program is and what the grant amount is for, and we're.
The grant would probably drive that.
Yeah, I mean, so if we get the full grant amount and it's something that necessitates a public process, there will be a public process. But if it's something that doesn't necessarily need a public process, it would just involve the stakeholders that were involved. Zoning map, just to update, that's been going well. It's moved out of the planning board into the city council. City council, I believe, will schedule a public hearing tomorrow night to adopt the digital map, which would make things much easier from an economic development perspective, because then the information that we're presenting online is actually accurate, as opposed to being with little asterisks but still come down to the planning department or the building department or the assessors to actually find out what your zone is and what you can or cannot do.
It's a big step from what we used to do.
Who's going to maintain that once it's digital? You guys?
No, so we've hired a consultant who does it, CAI Technologies. They're out of New Hampshire, and they've been doing this digital map for the last 4, 5, 6 years, something like that. Since there's been a digital map online, they've been dealing with it, but it's never been adopted as the official map, and there were a number of inconsistencies with the actual official map. And then the official map itself actually had inconsistencies within different versions of the official map that were all official. So all of that's being cleared up by the city council and the planning board.
And it'll be up to CAI to maintain it?
Well, so they'll maintain, every year we get all of the digital files. And then as there are changes to the map, we would let them know, and they would then
Good.
update the map. So we don't actually have to have any of
Files.
the computer know how to make it work. And if we decide to go with a different vendor at some point in the future, we would have all of the files are ours, and we get those updates every year,
Sweet.
so.
But is this gonna be online?
It is already online.
How do you get a hold of it?
From the city's homepage, easthampton.org, you can click on the online assessment tool. And that will bring up a viewer that brings up this map, and you can get access to
Okay.
all of the public records for every property in Easthampton that has a public record associated with it. Or at least as far as the assessor's records, the size of the lot, the zone, the assessed value of the land.
That's great.
Building data.
Yep.
Fun, it must feel good to get this coming toward the end.
Yeah, yeah,
It's been going on for a while.
yes, it has.
Even just disclaimer here though, right?
Well, that's because it's not the official map right now.
That particular hard copy one, is that what that refers to?
Well, after city
No, I mean,
council
this-
votes, then you can say it's official now.
Right, but this one is actually 2 years old.
Yeah, that hard copy.
That
was
hard
out of
copy
date.
is 2 years old,
Mhm.
and there's a number of, I could go through them with you, but we don't need to waste that time. The boardwalk is, I think, receiving a grant for accessibility, and they're getting an access award, the Stavros Access Award for Accessibility. I'm not sure when that will occur, but that's in the works.
Great.
That's the planning department report.
Jamie, just switching gears for a second. I'm not sure if I had heard somewhere that Jessica was working on some sort of long-term plan, meaning a year or two, for like a rebuild, rehab potential of Union Street.
We are working with the DPW to try to figure out how that, it's not as simple as just repaving the roads.
Right.
Because there's underground utilities that all need to be coordinated, there's above ground utilities.
Right.
It's a state highway, and the intent was, if you guys remember it was a year or two ago, we had a consultant come in and come up with a sort of vision for Union Street.
Right.
So trying to take some of those complete street ideas, that the street isn't just for cars.
Right.
Trying to integrate bicycles and parking, so there's needs for parking studies to, how to work a bike lane if it's possible, because it is a state highway.
Right. And there was talk about trying to line up Railroad and Liberty somehow.
Yeah.
But there was, the
So
rebuild
this-
was, talking about infrastructure underground, I wasn't just talking about paving, but there was this grand scheme for Union Street to be
Yeah, so it's a
like totally
complete,
makeover.
complete streets, and that's, it needs a lot of planning to go forward.
Yeah, but
Just
you really
the-
can't shut off half of it and do half and
No.
And-
those
and so
kinds
the-
of things, there's too many businesses are gonna.
Yeah.
And just, working with the consultants to get a design is,
Are they still
Very,
looking at
very-
the fact that they wanna put the electrical and things behind the facilities instead as opposed to on the street, like these?
I don't know
we
that,
talked
I
about
don't
many years
think
ago?
any decisions have been made, other than, getting onto the state's, transportation and improvements programs.
Good.
I mean, we have a history of success with it when you look at Cottage. I mean, Cottage is part of that same state highway, and we did a total rebuild.
Right,
God,
but
it's probably
that
10
was,
years ago
that was with
already now.
community development
Oh, wow.
block grant funds.
Right.
Which we don't have access to the same, like, the program itself has changed significantly since that was done.
Yeah.
As well as, you know, it's good, Easthampton's doing better compared to other municipalities in the state, but it's bad because we're not eligible for as much funding as we
Right.
used to be.
Right.
So Union Street's twice as long as Cottage.
It's a catch-22.
Yeah, so it's good for the
Union Street
city, but
also
it's
has-
also, you know, we don't get quite as much
Right.
funding, so we wouldn't necessarily be able to go back to the community development block grant program to do a streetscape improvement.
There was also no major road realignments with Cottage Street, the way there would be.
Right, but I don't even know if,
And
I know,
there was no
while,
bicycle lane.
right, while it was being studied, I just don't know if realigning those two streets is even gonna be feasible at the end of the day. You know, let's face it, they don't line up. It's like Highland Avenue and Florence Road, they don't line up, so, you know, can you do something to curve them and make them, you might be trying to put a square peg in a round hole, and eventually somebody might just say it can't be done. but-
But I think,
You could, but you'd lose a lot of the parking for that one little plaza.
You just gotta put a roundabout.
right,
Yeah.
I love it.
I love roundabouts.
I do too, my wife does, I love
I
them, I
like
really
it,
do.
they're not appropriate there,
Okay.
but it solves the problem, you know.
But it's just that I
Just keep
I
going
know
round and round, yeah.
It's amazing if you've been in town long enough, as a lot of us have been, that you went through these cycles where one street was sort of ignored while another one was brought up, and it seems to shift. So we all remember Cottage Street being pretty bad.
Yeah.
And you look at it today, and Union Street was always looked at with envy. And it's just flipped right around now. You know, it's just
Yeah,
flipped right around.
It did.
Yeah.
So and Main Street was redone in the intersection, and Cottage Street was redone, and now Union's kind of, you know, odd man out in the middle, so.
Mhm.
And by the time Union Street gets totally rebuilt, something
Back
else
to
is gonna look,
Cottage.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's bad now, I mean, you can
Oh
tell
my
the difference
gosh.
from Cottage to Main. You're just hoping you get over Union Street so you can get to the better one, you know,
Yeah.
it's really bad.
Yeah.
And it's not, you make a good point, it's not just paving, it's not as simple as
Right.
putting lipstick on the pig, it's a lot more than that, I know.
Yeah.
but-
right, and so that's it, to do it right, to do it comprehensively, it's a long-term project.
Mhm.
You know, I think that just doing the design itself is probably a year or two, working with the different consultants, you know, you have lots of different utilities that have to be coordinated, just getting those designs.
Yeah, the other piece, Jamie, that could come into play, we talked about the other day with the mayor, is, you know, by the time that gets done and ready to go to press, so to speak, you could have the availability of the center school space, which could potentially provide some municipal parking for Union Street. And that's just pie in the sky, me brainstorming in the middle of the night. but-
Well, I agree, actually, I kinda thought because of the way things take, that they might line up,
Yeah,
and you might be able to get like a Westfield type situation where, you know, some things just, you know, it was hard for them for 2 years, but some things just came together all at the same time.
right.
But, well, other than that, you know, 2
It was
years.
great.
Well, 2 years is better than 4 years.
But I'm guessing, you know, by the time the potential for a new elementary school comes online, now you've got the reuse of the old buildings, and the thing Center has for it is its proximity to Union, access to Union, and it's got a big open area. Even if you keep the existing building, it's got a big open area that could potentially be used for municipal parking for Union Street. So,
Yeah, there's a lot of options, you know, that EDIC wants to study.
Well, all those
Reuse
options have to
some-
come into play though, if we're gonna start talking about this, because the elementary school's that's gonna happen probably, but we're talking 3 or 4 years from now, but still,
yeah.
it has to be talked about at the same time.
Yeah, that'll create a lot of surplus buildings in
Absolutely would.
proximity to downtown.
So we're talking White Brook and everything.
Okay.
So I mean, there's still a lot to be determined as to where and when and
Yeah.
if and it still has to be approved by the voters if there's gonna be an override or however that
Yeah.
would be paid for. But, you know, it is something I think if the EDIC wants to study for how to reuse those buildings, that is a possibility.
Well, I think, I don't know, if it's probably premature, but I think at some point that would be very good, because,
Yeah.
we wouldn't want, I'm coming at it from a little bit of a harsh point of view, but we don't wanna repeat Parsons Street. And, and my approach is that whatever we say, A, B, and C, it's not so much that, it gets accepted or followed through, but it was spoken, and then, so that, where Parsons Street was kind of the heat of the moment, there was no thinking.
Well, part of the problem is that because the school department owns and uses their school department buildings,
Yeah.
they have to declare them surplus before they're turned over to the city, and then the city has to then surplus them. So once the school department says we don't have a need for them, and then they're turned back over to the city, then it's a very quick, well, what are we gonna do with it?
Right.
So part of that planning for reuse might be coming up with a report that the EDIC submits to
I agree,
the
that's
school department.
gotta be
as-
long
and, you know,
range.
It's not something that necessarily goes to the city. It has to get to the people who
Well-
who own and run the building.
Right, but I would think from experience that the school department's gonna declare those buildings surplus in about 3.5 minutes. Because then the maintenance and all that stuff reverts to the city.
But I mean, they didn't with Parsons.
Yeah, and that was.
Because we had a use,
But
there
there
was
was-
a use for it there, it became Parsons
But
Academy.
there was still
so
two,
there was a
that's the
use.
second lesson. I mean, that use came out conveniently.
Right,
And then when that use left, then all of a sudden it was a scramble, it became a dumping ground, and the school department bared with it for a year, but then like, well, we don't wanna heat it.
right. No, I'm guessing
You know.
with the completion of a new elementary school,
Yeah,
the school department would be hard pressed to find, and I'm not speaking from any sense of intimate knowledge about it, but I think the school department would be hard pressed to find a use for those buildings.
But that's gonna be part of the discussion when they start talking about doing a new elementary school. If they say the school's gonna be done in 2 years, occupy at that second year deadline,
Right.
that should be the deadline to get rid of the other schools. And that
Correct.
should be part of the discussion when we're talking about a new elementary school.
Right, but to David's point, there might be several mistakes you could point to with Parsons, and you could probably go back and point to the same mistakes. Maybe it's too harsh to call them mistakes, but the same path we took with Memorial Hall. And there'll be an outcry to save the buildings. And sometimes, I understand the historical, believe me, I'm a history buff when it comes to Easthampton, but it's not always the best end result for the city or for the ultimate developer of the property. So, you know, just I threw out as an example in a conversation with the mayor, Maple Street School. That property just lends itself perfectly to housing. You know, create that housing on the fringe of your business community. But not with Maple Street School there. But imagine Maple Street School gone, take that entire property and now develop the right kind of housing that would be attractive. But being forced to keep Maple Street School limits the developer's ability to do something with the entire parcel. Hence, you end up with what you have at Parsons Street, a beautiful project, but it's gonna end up with an eyesore behind it because of, you know, you're gonna be just, I guarantee you that's gonna be an eyesore behind Parsons Street School. And without that building on it, the city probably could have got $1 million for it. Instead, we got $10,000 for it. You ended up with a beautiful project, but we still have a problem with the back half of that property that we're gonna be living with for a long time. I'll bet you the money in my wallet, there's gonna be an outcry by neighbors of what's going on behind that school in the very near future. Probably not over the winter months, but wait till summer comes. There'll be, anyway, I agree with you, it takes a lot of planning and foresight, and to Mike's point, it may be early today, but it won't be early 6 months or a year from now.
Well, it's the same
Should
thing
we-
with Pepin. You said Maple's an excellent neighborhood residency.
Yep.
Pepin's the same thing with downtown walkability.
Yeah.
So if you think ahead long enough,
But see, the beauty of Pepin is, there's no land with it except what it sits on. So that particular property, to
but
me.
you could take
to me-
Center and make the parking lot.
Right, but it begs for a reuse of that building as opposed to a
Exactly.
demolition. Demolition doesn't gain you anything.
Right.
Because the footprint is what it is. So someone could rehab Center Pepin, either Class A office space, residential, what have you. But Maple, like Parsons Street was, has an abundance of land around it that could do much more with housing than you could by being strapped with the existing building, if that made sense.
Okay, what one thing I'm gonna do is put this on an agenda just loosely,
Yeah.
so we can just stay on top of
Keep it in
Well,
front of
that would be something that this group could put their teeth into now, rather than wait until the elementary
Well, I
thing
think
is
it-
dissolved.
I think it makes sense to wait until the school, until the voters decide whether or not they wanna fund this, the new elementary.
Well, the
school.
conversation's coming up on the 26th of October with the superintendent and MSBA,
Right, but I
what
guess.
direction they're
Well,
gonna
it's
take,
still early,
but
but
then.
it has to run a little bit parallel.
It does,
Because part of our selling to the town will be what's going on with the other buildings.
Mhm.
Now, I think it's a minor
Yeah,
part,
I
I don't
agree.
think it's the major part.
Okay, so by
It's part
the
of the
next
package.
meeting, we'll have some more stuff to talk about.
Yes, we will.
Because those buildings will generate money for the city, which
Right.
will assist in understanding like the vote for the voters.
Mhm.
And Parsons Street School, if my understanding is somewhat correct, that was our alternative program in our public schools. So it qualified for a different type of funding from the state. And when they brought some of that alternative program into the new high school, they still left that alternative school like in practice, just to see how everything would work out. So I think that was some of why that building, stayed with the schools.
Yeah,
They needed it for a little while to work out their alternative program.
Believe me, the problems weren't while it was with the school, the problems began when it
Well,
left the
right,
school.
yeah, right after. Yeah, but I think,
Okay,
they
Okay.
couldn't let it go right away.
Right.
Couldn't do it.
so let's carry on then. The next thing on our agenda is the master plan and economic development discussion. Who wants the floor first? Dave?
Well, it's so ironic that this is my committee, I was the chairperson. And I'm proud of the document, but I have no use for this.
Gift that keeps on giving, huh?
Yeah. So anyway, I just did something very, very basic. I mean, I put time into it, but I have some very brief notes. I just went to the goals and strategies, and I don't know how you guys want to approach it, but like goal number one, strategy number one, for me, I just wrote not necessary at this time. And then I have some yeses, then I have some nos.
And the yes means to readdress it?
Well, yes is kind of just generally in favor of it, but also might be maybe we're doing it as well. My note was brief, but like the first one, I say not necessary at this time when we have a city. I'm not a big fan of a citywide design review board, not because the goals or intentions of the board is bad, but the gridlock in creating that, I just don't think we have time for it.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just one of those things that, what's it gonna, we're having a hard enough time with a master plan implementation committee. Our energy committee doesn't meet consistently, and I think that, I just don't wanna waste resources on that. But like in strategy 2, allow for peer review, which is kind of goes as strategy 1, I'm all for it. I mean, I think the planning board
We
should,
have that.
it's not really enforceable, well, maybe, I wrote yes.
We've adopted the state law that allows planning board to ask for.
Okay, well then I just wrote yes,
outside
because I thought,
and peer review.
then we can just check it off then.
Good, okay.
This is my understanding, unless it was referring to something more specific than,
No, he's saying yes, he's
Yeah.
acknowledging that we do it.
yeah.
And you concur.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then in strategy 3, I just said yes, because I mean, why wouldn't we wanna implement improvements? I mean, we're always trying that, I mean, we know we're big, bottom of steel to do it, but I mean, I don't see, you know, and then just like the little brief discussion we had, I mean, if there's an opportunity for the EDIC to weigh in, and then, before Carol got here, Jimmy mentioned, there's a grant that Jessica's working on, he's not clear of the whole thing, but it's a planning grant, you know, we always weigh in on those things, and if they can buy a bench, we're gonna say yes. I mean, you know, or, you know, I mean, I'd be a little bit silly, but you know what I'm saying. The parking inventory, you know, I don't know if it needs to be done biannually, but, you know, I don't know when it was done last. I remember the EDIC, we talked about it at one time, but maybe back as far as 10 years ago. But there's nothing wrong with doing a parking inventory, because it goes back into it will feed into center school and other things as well.
Right.
I'm a firm believer that the perception of the parking lot on Cottage Street is worth its weight in gold all day long. You know, there's not very many spaces there when you stop and think about it.
Friday and Saturday night, it's
No,
impossible to find parking.
But people still think that there's parking because it's there.
Yes, yeah.
Well, you know there's a problem with the parking on Cottage Street when the tenant or the owners of the parking lot on Pine Street are enforcing
Right.
parking,
Yes.
or enforcing tenant
Little
only parking.
signs, yeah.
Oh, signs and people out there.
Yeah.
I've
Oh, really?
seen people come out and
Yeah.
tell people they need to move or be towed. So you know it's a problem on a Friday,
Yeah.
Saturday night, people parking back there.
How many people actually use the parking lot behind here, the municipal building, on the weekend?
Not a lot.
Is it full?
There's probably
Is it
a
full?
few people.
It's
No.
increasing, it's not
So,
full, but
I
it
guess-
is.
Yeah.
And also the one up the street,
I have
Yeah.
this,
AutoZone.
thought about parking and the perceived lack thereof. And it seems like whenever, many communities have this problem, whereas it's not necessarily the lack of parking, it's the perception
Yeah.
of that.
Right.
And so as opposed to creating more parking spaces, you know,
Well,
I
that's-
wonder about an
I
educational
was just gonna say, it's.
Sign.
program that helps to shift that paradigm.
Yeah.
Yes, but you wouldn't mind getting, parking here and walking up there.
I do.
Yeah.
These
park
people that
behind
go to
our-
the bars today are not walking.
Sorry?
Well,
They're not gonna walk.
well, they
Well,
should.
nobody's
They
gonna walk,
should.
that's
Well,
part of the
they
problem,
should.
and I wonder
They
too,
should.
if cities, if they had that overall, adopted that overall thought and goal to try to drive that.
I
Well,
think there's two
well,
things,
it is
Mo. I
like
think,
this
I think one is, it's in our human nature, if I can't see the front door, I don't have a parking place.
Yeah,
Right.
and that's
And-
exactly what I'm saying.
But the other one, I think Dave raised it, it's visibility. So the parking street might be perception over reality, but the parking lot on Cottage Street is very visible. This one is invisible.
Yeah, it is
We have
invisible.
to, somehow, we have to overcome that.
Signage.
We have to
Signage.
overcome that.
Education.
Since we've put up signs that say there's public parking behind this building, the lot has been used much more.
Yeah, and we've said that in other
And
parts,
so,
not just
you
signs,
know,
we've said, there's
But
parking right
it's
there.
just putting up the blue P
Yeah.
Yeah.
is enough to encourage people to use that lot on the weekend.
Or
It doesn't
even-
look like it's an office building that they're
Well,
gonna
we'll
get
even
to.
have
Or
the
even
same-
wayfinding signage, you know, that sort of
Right.
stuff.
I mean, I've
Right.
seen folks on the weekend park cars here and take kayaks off them and go to the boardwalk with the kayaks.
That's
You
right.
know? So, not sure if that's what they're supposed to be doing.
It's exactly what
not?
it's supposed to be doing.
Sure.
Well,
But I
yeah,
think this could be part of maybe what, go back to what Mo was saying, in part, the inventory can maybe be part of the education program.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll have the same
Inventory
problem with
slash
center school.
education.
If center school, just say it was parking,
Yeah.
it's gonna be behind the businesses, so people are gonna have to be made aware.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, some of that's education, some of that's training, and some of that's just patience. you
Well,
know.
that's what's gonna happen on Pleasant
what-
Street when that's all done there in the back on the
Right.
rail trail.
Yep.
They're gonna have to know there's parking back there now, so
Yeah.
that-
But I think it's
you're
good
right.
to have the education program, because, like,
Yeah.
let's say, like today, I think it was, either today or yesterday, in the Gazette, somebody was complaining about a $100 parking ticket in
Yeah.
Northampton.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
And, you know, in Northampton, you know, this year was the first year, I guess they went a little bit lax on first night parking in the afternoon. You know, like they want you to come to the city because they wanna get your parking ticket. I mean, anyway, they're known for it.
Yeah.
And so the
Yeah.
more accessible we can be, they're a little bit extreme, but we'll be the flip side.
But we can capitalize on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
totally.
And you know, the thing too is that not everything in the refrigerator can be at the front of the shelf.
Mm-hmm,
You
right.
know?
Nice and
You have
that.
to-
only
yeah.
stuff I want.
So, yeah.
No.
Yeah, all your stuff is there.
Yes, but where did,
And no matter how much parking you have.
not that I haven't seen it, but where is the blue peace sign? Is it,
Yeah, I haven't seen it either.
I
haven't
think
been
it was
looking.
on the, if you're coming in off of Williston Ave, it's right on the gate there.
so?
And I think that there's another one that's
Here on
on
Pacey, isn't it?
Union Street.
Okay, I was
or
gonna
on-
say-
or on Cottage Street that says like with an arrow.
With an
Just
arrow,
needs to be a little bit
okay.
maybe more comprehensive and a little bit
Yeah.
more strategic.
Yeah, as long as they're out there with arrows pointing to where it is.
Well, like David said, the survey might help us do that, so.
Well, and then, in my mind too, I think it's a job for the city arts to make some signs.
Sure,
Seriously do.
I agree.
sure, well, we'll bring it up next
Sure.
meeting.
You know,
Good.
well, you know,
I think that would be a fun way for the, I mean, it certainly goes with our
Yep,
eclectic,
yeah.
yep,
funky.
I agree, yep.
totally,
Why
just to
not?
make it a
It'd
little
be fun.
contest.
And yes,
Yeah.
maybe more noticeable perhaps,
Yeah.
but, you know, we can't all park in the front door.
And I'm assuming all the regulations that went in place years ago are still in effect
This is
that,
for signage.
so, for example, when we did redo Cottage Street, we lost a lot of parking. For example, you're not allowed to park on either side of the crosswalk.
Mhm.
So that's why, you know, I wanna say we lost 6 or 8 parking
Mm-hmm.
spaces on Cottage Street
Easily.
and Union.
Yeah.
I assume that's still a requirement that those,
I mean, so that there are, I don't know off the top of my head, but I know that there are regulations and guidelines, and I don't know what are binding and what are optional. I do know that, you know, within a certain distance of a corner, within a certain distance of a crosswalk, within a certain distance
just-
of a fire hydrant, and
Yeah.
so there are all these things, and most of, if you look, the city's, at least at one point in time, there were markings on the ground, you
right,
know.
yeah, they do fade quickly.
That-
And to the point, I don't know if it was you, Tom, that made it, or you, that, you know, people just wanna be able to park at the front door.
Right.
And, you know, you could have 10 spots or 1,000, there's still only gonna be X
Yeah, in
amount
front of the
by
door.
the front door, so
Right.
that's part of the education, is like,
Yeah.
I mean, we could have 1,000,000 parking spaces and it
Yeah.
wouldn't be enough because of the.
Okay, well, so, David, carrying on.
Oh,
Well, yeah, I wanted to say something. So when you talk about educating the public about parking, what do we mean exactly? With signage, or
That could
because
be
a lot
part
of
it.
people that come to town are not from Easthampton, and how do you educate those?
Well, the
Well, that could be
brochures,
part-
yeah,
There'll be signage
brochures.
for those.
That could be part of it, it
For
could
instance,
be,
when we do the big deal on Cottage Street every year, there's brochures ahead of time, you can have parking
Yeah.
things on
Well, and
there.
East Hampton City Arts and their,
And they
Notified
the art
already
walk
where they
thing
are.
does have,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
that listed
right,
there,
and it could
so.
also be as creative as maybe a, citywide campaign, you know, exercise or walking or
Mhm.
whatever,
Yes.
just, you know, that kind of incorporates
Mhm.
another level
And
of.
part of our city website is,
Education.
you know, as it's improving slowly, you know.
But I think
Yeah,
the Clay's,
I'm
I think the
just
Clay's
thinking
point.
that when somebody drives to Easthampton from another city and isn't familiar with it at all, and they're driving around looking for a place to park at one of the restaurants or shops or whatever, and, you know, there's no way to educate those
Right.
people. So
Well, that's
to me-
Signage,
That could be
signage.
signage. That could
I
be
also-
signage.
Oh, well, that's what
Like
I
you
meant,
have-
signage,
you
which
have a sign
I
in the
wasn't sure if
municipal
that
lot.
was included in educating the public.
Yeah, no, I think it is.
Yeah.
You'd have one in the municipal lot saying additional parking down the street
Yep.
and such and such.
Right,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
also think part of that too is that the local community, and I don't know how successful this could possibly be, because I think, again, people tend to wanna park right in front of the front door regardless, but, you know, I try not to, unless it's gonna be half an hour or less, to park in front of the office, because there's other businesses there that need those spaces, and people are coming and going.
You're on one of
So,
them.
you know, perhaps, I don't know if this would be, if you could even have success with this, but to try, again, to educate the local population that if you are from town and you know of other places to park, maybe, so that when our visitors come,
Yeah.
it's not as confusing. I don't know if that's
We,
possible, but I'm just
we
thinking.
did something along those lines years ago, Mo, where we did find that there were some businesses that the employees were actually parking in front of the business.
Uh-huh.
And we
Right.
tried to have an educational thing with the
Yeah.
business owner to say, hopefully there's some
I
off-street
know,
parking
that's
for
an
your
ongoing battle in
employees.
any community.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You know, and you can learn from Northampton,
Yes.
how they approach it, but that's not necessarily, you know, welcoming everybody. It's
Right.
sort of,
No.
you know, here's the.
Yeah.
Their
They
form
like
of
us now, let's leave
education
it alone.
appears to be telling people where they can't park.
Well, it's telling people where they can pay their ticket.
Yeah, and so it's telling, and it says to people how long we want you to visit.
Right.
Yes.
You know, so you have 1 hour
Right.
parking, it says,
2 hour
we
parking.
want you here for 1 hour, no
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
You know, if you have no parking limits, then it's come and stay and, you know, see what we have to offer.
I think,
I think it's a bigger picture issue too. It's not just, okay, this is gonna solve this and this is gonna solve that. It's kind of an integrative,
right.
educational,
I mean, I'd like to see
think-
some sort of cooperation between the businesses on Union Street and, well, Union Street especially because there's a lot of large lots. And I know that there's an informal, like, we don't tow, but the lots clearly say,
Yeah.
you know, parking for
Well, and
this
where you-
plaza only.
And I guess where we have to be, because someone mentioned earlier Union Plaza, where we have to be careful and respectful is Union Plaza is technically not public parking. It's
Mhm.
parking provided for those businesses.
right, and they're paying rent on that.
Yeah, you gotta be careful about, there could be some cooperative things. I know there, so for example, on Sunday morning, Union Plaza's not quite so busy. You ought to see the cars parked in there who are going to the diner for breakfast because they don't all fit in the diner parking lot. But from time to time, you'll see cars lined up at Brookside Cemetery. You know, again, gotta be a little bit respectful of where we're parking. You know, the driveway next to the pond in Brookside will be full of cars sometimes. And
Is there-
that's not public parking, it's a cemetery.
What about, I know with the improvement of the building next to One Congress Street for the condominiums and apartments, behind there, they made quite a bit of additional parking. Is any of that available? Does anyone know?
Parking's pretty tight back there.
Yeah, I think it
It's tight
is.
for Riverside,
Yeah.
we're
In
on,
and out.
yeah, we're on a tight leash with no real
It's tight
extra
back
space.
there.
Is it still? Okay.
Yeah.
I think the
Yeah.
answer
Was
is
there-
50 paces.
were
I
there
don't think it's being
spaces
totally
added?
utilized.
Yes,
even
there
though
were
it's being
spaces
more,
added, but
it's
it's
still-
for the
it's still
residents
tight.
of,
More-
yeah.
But I
More.
do also
Comprehensive
think that there
plan.
might be possibilities to work with business owners, property owners
Yeah.
to, you know,
Especially if they wanna increase their foot traffic and their profit
Yeah.
margin, so yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's a fluid thing, I mean,
Yeah.
you have the inventory, and you talk, and you have, you know, you have conversations and move on.
Yep.
So maybe we could just add education to strategy for parking education.
And Mo, when you don't park directly in front of the chamber, where do you park?
We're fortunate enough to be able to, Mike Superson allows us to park in that parking lot, which belongs to him.
What about that lot across the street behind the small oven bakery?
I'm not familiar with that.
I always park there when I go to the chamber, and
Oh,
it
you do?
seems like
Yeah.
a public lot.
They're like, what, 15
Is
to
it?
10 spaces back there?
Behind the dry cleaners?
Oh, right.
Oh.
Yeah, behind small ovens.
I've gotta believe that's all owned by
It's
Fedor.
Yeah, it's private property.
It's
Yeah.
private
Yeah,
property.
that one ebbs and flows, and trade-ins is gone, but they had a vicious war.
Yeah.
Yeah, that and the one for Rite Aid too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right,
Yeah.
yeah.
you know, but it ebbs and flows, I mean, for a while, I sneak in there sometimes.
Are you
you know.
But it is private,
Lucky
it is
that
private.
Mike lets us
And again,
Yeah.
like all of
Because
those,
Where would Denny's and I park?
all of those parking lots behind the businesses connect to one another, or they could connect to one
They
another
could.
very
They
easily.
don't, but-
And there's probably a way to
Increase some spaces.
to increase the spaces, make it more efficient if you were to look at it comprehensively, as opposed to, you know, each business just has their, or each property has just their small space.
Well, the Rite Aid and the cleaners do connect.
Yeah,
It's all the same owner, but they do connect today behind where Subway is.
yeah.
But not also, they don't connect with one behind small oven though.
Hmm.
Really, behind?
Yeah,
Go
it's
behind,
tight.
go
Yeah.
behind
It's
Subway,
very
behind
small.
Subway.
Oh, yeah.
They
It's
connect.
like a
But-
trail.
But,
I have to take a
for,
walk back there.
with all due respect, that's all private today.
Yeah.
Right,
But
so
they
this
do
is why,
connect.
you know, in
Okay.
agreements or
Unless
whatever.
It's worth a conversation anyway.
Unless someone's put a fence up, I haven't seen it
Mhm.
connect.
Okay,
So it might be worthwhile.
so let's carry on.
Well, on strategy number 5, I wrote yes. There's two parts to that. You know, it says maintain the efficiency of the local permitting process for adaptive building reuse. Obviously, I mean, I think the city always has been very cooperative with the mills as far as, you know. And then identify an appropriate site for chapter 43D. I just simply don't know if that program's still around or how Jamie feels about that. I have no idea.
Yeah, so the 43D program is still around, but there's no funding associated with it anymore.
That's helpful.
So,
Oh, just, you know, when it
Yeah,
when it
and
comes
we-
back,
and we
we
do
might
have-
take advantage of it.
right, so we do have, properties that are, the 43D
Yeah.
properties are properties that are, part of the state's, they're specifically designated to be, expedited permitting. We do generally a very good job with our permitting anyways, if you look at what the statutory requirements allow
Yeah, right.
for
State.
I think so.
delays in permitting, so you could apply for your special permit and it could take, 6 or 8 months under the statutory requirements, and we generally do, the planning board generally gets their permits done in one session, sometimes two. So it's a nice thing to be able to say, we have this site, but the reality is that we don't, we're not slow, I guess, does that make sense? We're not like so slow in our permitting
That we have to.
that we have to do it, but
Improve it.
it does get a listing on the state's website,
Oh, I see.
I'm not sure what the details are for listing.
Yeah. Well, it's one of the things when it comes, it's like MassWorks. If it's available, I guess we can go after it, but if it's not available.
Yeah.
In strategy 6, I wrote yes. Obviously, you want to create, just like with the parking, but you want to create physical linkages, walking trails, reconnectings. I think it's a long way out, but if someday the downtown and Route 10 had some kind of a connection, without digging into it, that'd be awesome. What I'm talking about is basically a sidewalk down O'Neill Street. But
Right at the new bank.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then, so goal number 2, strategy number 1, I said yes. Those are just generally good ideas that we just keep trying to. And strategy 2, I wrote no, is, I think inclusionary zoning bylaw is just too, we have an affordable housing in our zoning now. And I think the inclusionary zoning bylaw is I'm not really a fan of it, but that's not my point. I think it's a decisive thing. It's a waste of time. I mean,
Because we're already doing it?
well, sort of.
But-
we don't meet the state 10%, but I think we are affordable.
We're striving for that, aren't we?
Oh yeah.
So an inclusionary zoning bylaw,
What that generally means is just in a very, very cut down version is if somebody proposes a project, a certain percentage, according to the bylaw, will be affordable as defined by the state. So if you have a 10-unit subdivision, 3
Right.
I'm just
Right.
making numbers up.
right, but we do that by virtue of the affordable.
Well, we have affordable housing zoning that we can take advantage of. We don't have to, but it's.
Don't we have to do that by state stuff?
No, so there's a couple different pieces that are all influencing what our housing requirements are.
Mhm.
So chapter 40 B of the state law requires municipalities to have 10% of their housing stock to be affordable
Right,
to low and moderate income buyers as determined by the metropolitan statistical area. So we're looking at the Springfield MSA, which has an average or median income, let's say in the upper 60s for a family of 4.
mhm,
So an affordable unit would be no more than 30% of their income goes to rent or to mortgage
Mhm.
payments and other
Mhm.
housing costs. And so by those numbers, most of the rental units are affordable, and a lot of the the properties for sale are also affordable. However, they're not deed restricted, and so they're not permanently affordable.
mhm.
They're not restricted to just lower moderate
So
income.
we just so happen to be meeting our,
So we only have like 6.5%
okay,
that meet
Designated.
that go towards that 10%
And not every community
requirement.
necessarily has hit their target.
Most communities
Yeah.
haven't.
Right.
And the two that have in our area,
Who is that? Do you know?
Amherst and
Northampton.
Northampton, it's a crock of shit anyway. Well, they're the two most unaffordable communities.
Yes, exactly.
But they do meet the criteria.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have the
That's
10%. They have the
But
Well,
we're
they're-
at 6%, and
Yeah.
So they're 90%,
6.5.
so
And partly, we don't, so because we are an affordable, our housing is affordable generally, it's hard to convince people
Right.
to
Yeah.
put a deed restriction on it.
well, with it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so an inclusionary housing bylaw
We'd be more restricted.
would require that any project would meet some, so, you
All
know.
projects.
Well,
I
depending
mean,
how
so,
it's designed.
yeah,
Oh,
you
okay.
could write it anyway, we could
Yeah.
bring any, so it could say that it doesn't take effect until you're proposing 10 or more units.
Okay.
But I think, yeah, but I think with
Not
this,
needed now, maybe, but.
with it, like with 15 Cottage Street, that was part of the smart growth, so they took advantage of it. On strategy 3, I wrote no, partly because I don't think this was, in principle it's all right, but I don't know if it's necessary, and I think there's kind of a contradiction. He says revise local regulations as needed to encourage environmental protection and business growth. I don't think those two things should be mutually exclusive, and I think that was the goal. But then it said the key example is the Massachusetts Biomap project, which is an assessment tool. If you go by a biomap project, you won't build anything. You just won't, because it kind of is.
Too restricted.
Well, it's not that it's restrictive, it's basically saying this is what we have and this is what we're gonna protect. So, and it's, you know, I think this town is good at protecting open space, and I think we should shore that up. But I don't know, I mean, I'm not hung up on this, I just don't know if it's worth.
pursuing,
Yeah.
right, pursuing, yeah.
The strategy 4, I remember this when we talked about this way back. Adopt ordinances requiring new buildings to be structurally capable of supporting additional stories. While ordinances shall apply citywide, blah, blah, blah. We're talking about Cottage and Union Streets and possibly Main Street. Well, the thing is, I'm not, I wrote in this one, I didn't write no or yes, I wrote impractical. I mean, if a building burns down and is a total loss, I guess then we have a chance to do something like this.
Where, otherwise where you can be building new buildings.
Right, that's what I'm getting at, you know, and, so if it was like if the ordinance was designed in such a way that encouraged the second story, I'd be fine. But,
And is it just a second story, David, or is it
or,
multiple
I mean,
stories?
additional.
Because,
Yeah.
because now we're restrictive on the
Height.
number
Yeah.
of stories on Main Street and,
Well, in downtown business, we can go put 4 or 5 stories.
is it that high?
In Easthampton?
I didn't think about that.
And then with the smart growth zoning, depending on what their bonus is, you can go, I believe you can go higher.
Yeah.
You can also reduce the number of parking
That's the other
spaces.
trick, you have to be, if you're gonna make us go higher in a defined area,
Right,
parking has to be lessened,
Right.
because,
That's it.
right.
And now, you know, we also have a new ordinance
defeats
that's
our purpose.
limiting building sizes to under 50,000 square feet, so
Right, yeah.
that sort of,
Okay, so I
all of
think-
these things sort
We
of
should limit it.
layer.
50,000 horizontal.
So you're right
feet,
that
not
this one
vertical.
doesn't necessarily.
yeah, it's
It's
just,
gonna yea or nay. Okay,
Yeah,
go number 3.
I'll go just through a few more and then, because it's getting time, but, you know, strategy 1, I mean, what do you think? You know, we need a, you know, economic development planner, right? But I just wrote budget. I mean, I don't think anyone's against it.
No, I think that's kind of us, since there is no budget
Yeah,
for that.
well.
That's us.
And in strategy 2, I just wrote yes. I mean, obviously, I think it comes down to efforts from the planning department, the mayor, this board, to, you know, in the chamber, to just to work together and do what we gotta do to, you know, have outreach and stuff.
Yep.
You know, it's just, you know, strategy 3, identify and cultivate new opportunities for investment in business and economic development, pursue funding opportunities. I wrote yes, but I guess that's kind of us in a sense.
Mhm.
Obviously the planning department as well. I mean, when you get beyond what's your daily fires, I mean, that's what you wanna be doing.
Same with strategy 4.
Yeah, and the only thing about strategy 4 was in my mind, you know, it's one Ferry Street, but I guess there could be some other targeted economic areas. They would have to be defined or labeled.
Yeah, I mean, looking at that, I don't know if that was referring to economic target areas.
I think it was, I think it.
Which are no longer, necessary.
Right.
The state, there's a number of, funding opportunities, that were specifically to economic target areas inside of economic opportunity areas, which was a fancy way of saying areas that are, lower income as compared to the state, minority, higher minority populations. And there are a bunch of requirements. Easthampton is part of the Holyoke Economic Opportunity area.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'd have to have, within that, you'd have to have a target area. But anyways, the state threw all of that out, because there was a lot of pushback that it was not fair to all municipalities and all areas in the state. So I don't know if that was what it was referring to.
I don't remember fully, but and then, you know, we have there's the TIF, tax increment financing. We have used it a few times. It's something that's, you you read about in the paper that where a big business is gonna get a tax break, provided it supplies a certain number of new employees with their expansion. We've done it a few times, you know, if it comes up, I'm sure we would do it, but the thing is though, it's a paperwork burden to the city and to the owner. They have to do it right.
Yeah.
We lost out on once or
We
twice.
yeah,
you
we
know,
watched
because-
that go.
I would
Yeah.
say for this one, let's keep that as a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's other.
Can I say this, let's stop
Yeah.
before goal 4 and we'll carry on next time? Just because there are a couple things I wanted to
Yeah.
get to. I don't think we necessarily need to talk about the small business orientation right now. We can do that later. And the sign ordinance and community benefit district update, I don't think there's anything new on either of those. What I do want to do is, before the meeting started, we were informally talking about the meeting time. There's some interest in moving it back to 4 o'clock. How do the two of you feel about that?
It's okay for me, I just happen to be out showing houses this afternoon.
How's it for you?
I prefer 4 myself.
You do, okay. Well, I think, will someone make the motion then?
I'll make a motion to move it back to 4 o'clock.
Okay. Second, okay. Is everyone, any more discussion?
No, it's great.
Will there just be ongoing until we change it again?
Yes.
And the reason we changed it in the first place was because one member felt fairly strongly about it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's not here.
Yeah.
And,
So, and I,
Well, we didn't
I
do it
hate to-
because he wasn't here, but it's
Yeah.
because
the majority.
majority of this.
I
Four, yeah.
don't intend this to be railroading because he's
Yeah.
not here,
Yeah.
but I think the rest of us wanted it 4 o'clock,
Yeah.
so. Okay, so vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Okay. So next meeting will be at 4 o'clock on November 17th. Okay?
I have one quick question, because I know some of you might be able to answer it. I had somebody email me asking me why Easthampton wasn't participating in any solar initiative for residences like other towns in the state have.
I don't know. I guess no one's approached us about it, really.
Well,
I'm curious what solar initiatives.
Well, I know like
Northampton's got one.
Northampton had one and Amherst has been
Yeah,
part of
Northampton had
one.
like a joint thing
Yeah.
between, they put out the bid,
Yeah,
something with the city, and they were trying to attract a solar company.
yeah.
There was a limited pool, but if enough people had signed
Signed up.
on, then they would get cut rate, or better rate,
Yeah.
installations.
For residential.
For
And
residents.
there was a commercial component, but it was
Yeah.
very small.
Yeah.
You know, but it was I don't know if it was a city energy commission.
I'm not
Northampton, there
sure,
was somebody in
even
Northampton.
Ashfield, I think,
I
participated in
don't-
some.
Well, Buckland has
Small
one as
companies
Some of the
well.
or
smaller-
What
communities
does the
that group
Easthampton
together.
landfill go towards?
Well, right to the city.
Yeah.
I don't think that the reason we don't have one is because anyone's been keeping it out. I just think no one has stepped up and started the process.
Okay, well, okay.
It seems like the initiative would come from the solar companies knocking
Yeah,
on
and
the city's
we also
door.
have we have an energy commission that is questionably active, so, you know.
Well, maybe I
Well,
should
maybe
direct
that
this person
question
to get
should go
involved.
there. Yeah,
Because she
maybe they
seems
could go
very
there.
Yeah, I mean-
interested in being
Well,
active,
it's
so
a
I
little-
will
it's a
tell
little
her.
ironic, because at Northampton, I used to put solar in my house, so I'm still learning, but Northampton being National Grid, is near a cap for net metering, or at their cap.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
no,
the
this
big
is becoming a
drawback.
We're at
problem.
Eversource,
Yeah.
and Eversource, you know, like now my solar's been installed for 5 weeks,
Mhm.
and I think it's gonna be at least 2 more months before it's activated. According to the electrical inspector, National Grid will activate it within a week,
Yeah.
but Eversource takes 4 or 5 months.
Yep, yeah.
They didn't when I had mine.
No, but they are.
No,
they
They're
are-
dragging, you know,
Yeah.
I think it's a, you know, psychological thing for them.
Yep.
They'll say it's manpower, but they're a big company.
Yeah,
Man.
no, I've heard
So,
this complaint,
but,
yeah.
you know, you know, I'm assuming Carol's been asked that a little bit because of her profession, and I've come across that, it's like, you know, we have a strong lease program going, informal lease program
Oh, yeah.
downtown.
Yeah, but-
You see it all over town. But,
Yeah, yeah.
But
yeah.
not a, you know.
I would say encourage her to give.
Yeah, I will, I will. I
Isn't the
will.
net metering part of it a problem in Massachusetts right now?
It's a
though?
problem nationwide, I think.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
it's funny, it depends on the state. Florida is trying to actually pass some laws that you cannot be off the grid and net metering is a hassle. California's taking the other approach. The utilities are behind this too. In California, the utilities are saying, I want more net metering
Mhm.
because it helps lower our
Yeah.
capacity requirements.
Yeah.
It's all how you look at it. I mean, Eversource goes out
It's
and
confusing.
yeah, Eversource says that net metering is people mulching off the grid, but it's free production too.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
so it's a matter how you couch it, but you know, in whose interest. But anyway, you know,
Okay, well, good.
Right.
Does anyone have anything else?
Well, do
go
we
ahead.
know when the small business owner workshop might happen? Do we have like a month, or do you have an idea?
Well, I've been thinking about that, and I'm wondering, as far as the pamphlet goes, I mean, we've been working on that. I'm currently working on some pieces so that I can give them back to Jamie. And it's kind of a process, and it's gonna take me about another week or so. But I'm not really sure that a gathering with cookies and juice is really gonna be all that useful.
I'm just thinking the holidays are coming, that's all, so, you know,
Yeah, I'm
November,
not thinking-
December, I
I'm
mean, it
thinking that it's not
kinda
necessarily gonna
jams
be
up.
that useful, and I feel like it's, in some ways takes away from the item itself. It just, I don't know how useful it's gonna be, if that makes any sense at all.
Do you want me to keep it on the agenda for next time?
No?
Okay.
How about that?
Okay, well, there it goes.
I have
So it'll be,
just
No date.
under new business, I have 3 quick things.
sure.
So, as part of you know, economic the master plan, I just want to throw out 3 things for discussing at the next meeting. But I've talked to Jessica about this very briefly. I think it might be a good idea if the city changed the zone for the property that's located at 136 Cottage Street. We can get into it more, but anyway, that's the property that used to be Luigi's and Dr. Kanazi's
There's
office.
also the, flywheel.
Flywheel was.
Yeah, Flywheel, right. I don't know if people realize, but anyway, it's because it's been vacant,
Mhm.
it's a non-conforming use. That side of the street is residential. And even though it's been, you know, the commercial uses were grandfathered, it's been vacant so long that, I'm not saying the city wouldn't allow anything, but it's hard for a prospective purchaser to sink their teeth into it, knowing that it needs to get a variance possibly, depending, you know, how things looked at.
Okay.
Anyway, that's just one thing I just want to throw out. I think the city needs to revisit over 55 zoning, I think from an economic development point of view. And then the last thing I just want to throw up for new business, if you don't mind, is I don't know, I wrote this down before I heard Jamie talk about that grant that Jessica's working on, but I think it'd be nice if the city or the EDIC did from an outside perspective, a feasibility / potential study of 1 Ferry Street. You know, I know it's not our property, you know, we don't own it, but I just think we should be proactive instead of passive.
Okay.
And those were just for the next meeting, if people are interested in talk about it, that's all.
I'll put all three of them on there. What is the over 55 zoning?
Yeah.
Basically, the town adopted it in 1996, and some projects in town were built on it, like on the condominiums on East Street, some condominiums behind College Highway Variety, and on South Main Street
Lathrop.
in Lathrop.
Okay,
And it's basically, there's a requirement.
55 years old.
Right. Then when affordable housing came in 4 or 5 years ago, for some reason, political, we adopted one at the expense of the other,
Okay.
you know.
I think, Dave, the other thing that happened, if I recall, is when they all seemed to come online at the same time, and there was a fear that there was a glut, and that, holy cow, we've got 300 over 55 units, let's put a moratorium on it.
Yeah.
Well, X number of years later,
They're all full.
they're all full. And we know of a couple families at least that have moved out of town
Yeah.
for over 55 housing. Because when they were ready to sell their house and downsize, there was none available.
Okay.
So it just, I think, demonstrates in retrospect the negative implications, the unintended consequences of moratoriums. And it might look good at the time you put it on, but if you put it on and forget about it and leave it there forever,
Yep.
it's gonna come back to bite you someday.
Okay. We'll
Okay.
definitely put those things on the list next time.
Thank you.
Did I cut you off? I'm sorry.
No.
Okay. Anyone have anything else? Move to adjourn?
Oh, the meeting date?
Our meeting date
November
is
17th.
November
You said
17th.
that?
It's on the agenda.
Pay attention.
At 4
4
o'clock.
o'clock.
4 o'clock.
I got the 4 o'clock part.
November
I
17th.
might have been here every day at 4 o'clock.
I was here today at 4 o'clock, because I didn't realize it was further.
All right, on
Okay,
to
the
the
meeting's
next.
adjourned. Thank you.
Do you want to turn off the camera?
Yes.